1 millionth of a second. In that fraction of a second, the power of a punch doesn't just double, it becomes exponential. In most shonen anime, strength comes from willpower. It comes from guts, or friendship, or a promise you made to a childhood friend. But there's a cruelty at the heart of Jujutsu Kaisen. It's a world that explicitly tells you, life is not fair. You're either born a monster, like Satoru Gojo, or you're born to be crushed by one. In this world, power is fuel, and that fuel is malice, grief, regret. Gege Akutami didn't just build a magic system, he built a meat grinder, a world where 80% of your potential is decided the moment you are born, and the only way to break your limits is to sacrifice your humanity. So what makes this power system a masterpiece isn't the magic, it's the bargaining. It's how the weak try to cheat the strong. It's how a sorcerer with no talent can trade away their lifespan, their limbs, or even their soul, just to survive for one more minute. Today we aren't just talking about cool fights, we're dissecting the most ruthless, mathematical, and unfair power system in modern history. To understand why this system works, we have to start with the fuel. In most fantasy, mana or ki is a positive life force. In Jujutsu Kaisen, the power source is toxicity. Curse energy is the runoff of human sentience. It is weaponized grief, anger, fear. Think of humanity as a leaky faucet. Non-sorcerers leak this negative energy constantly. It pulls into places of shared trauma, schools, hospitals, execution grounds, and coalesces into cursed spirits. Now sorcerers on the other hand are trained to control and channel their cursed energy into Jujutsu, and if this amount is higher than a certain degree, it grants the person the ability to see cursed spirits. So it's a very simple system at a base level. But here's where Akutami introduces the first layer of hard magic math into the equation. You see, cursed energy itself is negative. It is meant for destruction. If you pour negative energy into a wound, you're just adding more destruction to damaged tissue. You can't heal with it. To produce healing energy, you have to perform a mathematical operation within your body. You have to multiply cursed energy by itself. Negative times a negative gives you a positive. This is reversed cursed technique. This sounds simple enough, but in universe, it is incredibly inefficient. It costs double the fuel to create positive energy. That is why healing is so rare. Only the absolute elites, like for example Gojo, Sukuna, and Yuta, can do it consistently. It forms a strict resource economy, where taking damage matters because most people cannot simply bounce back from it.
Don't die yet. There are things I need you to do for me before that.
The critical hit mechanic, the Black Flash. This happens when physical impact and curse energy application synchronizes within 1 millionth of a second. But Akutami didn't just make it a 2 times multiplier. That of course would be boring. The Black Flash raises the power of the attack to the exponent of 2.5. Let's do the math. If your punch has a power of 100, a normal critical hit, which is times 2, gives you 200. But a Black Flash raises that 100 to the exponent of 2.5, and that gives you 100,000. This is why Yuji Itadori, a kid with no innate technique for most of the series, can hurt special grade monsters. The math allows him to punch way above his weight class. It also puts the user in the zone, restoring their output and sharpening their focus. It is a mechanic that rewards precision over raw stats. Now, there's also what's known as binding vows. If curse energy is the physics, binding vows are the legal code per se. And in my opinion, this is what truly separates JJK from other shonen. You can in a sense negotiate with the universe to change the rules of your power. It is transactional. You give up something, you get something back. Risk equals power. Take Nanami for example. He doesn't enjoy working late, so he made a binding vow with himself. I will limit my energy output to 80% between my 9 to 5 shift. So in exchange for handicapping himself during the day, the moment his shift ends, he moves into overtime, and his output spikes to 120%. He turned his work-life balance into a combat mechanic. It is thematic genius, but it's also tactical. He effectively creates a second wind mechanic for himself in prolonged fights. Then there's the darker side to this as well. Meimei has a weak technique. She controls crows. It's useless for combat unless you use a binding vow. She forces the crow to make a self-ending pact, which is the best I can say on this platform. So the crow sacrifices its life in exchange for removing the limit on its curse energy output. In the eyes of this power system, a life is a massive currency, even a bird's life. By spending that currency, Meimei turns a scavenger bird into a homing missile, capable of one-shotting special grade curses. It is ruthless, efficient, and perfectly fits the malice of the system. With that said, we have to address the elephant in the room. A lot of people call this a plot hole or convenience. But when you look at the binding vow mechanics, it's actually one of the most logically sound moves in the series, even if you hate the result. Here's the deal. To cut Gojo, Sukuna needed to use a slash that targeted the world itself, bypassing Gojo's infinity. But Sukuna was battered. He had lost a hand. He couldn't perform the required hand sign to charge the attack. So he made a deal with the devil. The deal, of course, was that I will launch this slash right now without using hand signs. The cost was, in exchange, every single time I use this move in the future, I must use two hands, perform the hand sign, chant the incantation, and point the direction. He permanently nerfed his strongest attack for a one-time instant cast. He pretty much mortgaged his future to win the present. This isn't a plot hole, it's the ultimate expression of the hard magic system. He won because he was willing to mutilate his own moveset forever. That is the beauty of binding vows. They allow the user to mold the system to their will, but only if they have the skill to do so. Even so, the pinnacle of sorcery in Jujutsu Kaisen isn't binding vows. That is actually a thing called a domain expansion. In most manga, a super move is just a bigger bomb or laser beam, but in JJK, a domain is a rewriting of reality per se. You manifest your inner world, trap your opponent inside, and impose a rule, what's known as a sure hit. It's not that the attack chases you, it's that the attack spawns on you. You can't dodge it because it doesn't travel through space. What makes this fascinating is the history. In the past, domains were common because they weren't necessarily lethal. They forced you to play a game or follow a rule, like Higuruma's court. In the modern era, sorcerers became obsessed with instant kills. They made domains lethal, which made them harder to construct and difficult to awaken. But one person brings back the old school style with the most complex, ridiculous ability in shonen history. That of course being Kenji Akari. His power is a romantic comedy pachinko machine. He traps you in a gambling parlor. He spins the slots, and if he hits a jackpot, he gets a bonus. That bonus being infinite curse energy for 4 minutes and 11 seconds. The length of the anime theme song playing in the background. And because he now has infinite curse energy, his body instinctively performs reversed curse technique to prevent him from exploding. That makes him automatically immortal for that duration. He doesn't even have to think about healing, his body just does it. And the crazy part is that once the song is finished, his energy is full again, so he can just open another domain and start gambling again. It's a loop of immortality fueled by luck and dopamine. It forces the opponent to play a game they didn't agree to, where the house always wins. With that said, the true test of a power system isn't how cool the explosions are. It's how it handles a fight between two people with weird, non-destructive abilities. So if you want to understand JJK battle tactics, look at Megumi versus Reggie Star. Megumi summons shadow animals. Reggie forms objects from receipts he keeps in his pockets. It sounds silly, but I think this is one of the best tactical fights in the manga. This fight wasn't about power levels, it was about inventory management. Reggie is counting his receipts, managing his resources. Megumi realizes that he can't overpower him, so he lures him into a gymnasium. Why? Because an enclosed space acts as a shell for his incomplete domain. The climax of the fight itself hinges on a bluff. Reggie thinks Megumi's strongest unit, the Divine Dog, was killed earlier. Megumi maintains this deception for chapters. He utilizes the weight of his shadows to sink Reggie into the floor, not to crush him, but to immobilize him. When Reggie thinks that he has won, the dog attacks. He wasn't dead, he was just unsummoned. This is information warfare. The fight was decided by the person that was able to hide their assets better. Now, you also have the heavyweight title fights as well. Gojo vs Sukuna is one of the best fights you'll ever see in any shonen manga. It is in essence a stress test for the entire magic system. We saw them manipulate the architecture of their barriers. Sukuna uses an open barrier to attack Gojo's domain from the outside, where it's weak. Gojo responds by flipping the durability of his barrier, making the outside hard. Gojo then shrinks his barrier to the size of a basketball to increase the density. It's like watching two hackers rewriting the code in real time while punching each other in the face. It rewards the audience for paying attention to the mechanics explained 100 chapters ago. It is very similar to Hunter x Hunter in that way. Akutami has openly admitted that Nen is the grandfather of cursed energy, but there is a fundamental philosophical difference between them, which I dub as creativity versus determinism. Nen is a soft, hard hybrid. It empowers self-expression. You develop an ability that fits your personality. If you lie a lot, you get a deceitful texture skill. You are in control to some extent. Jujutsu Kaisen is a hard system rooted in genetic determinism. You don't choose your technique, you are born with it. Gojo says it plainly. 80% of a sorcerer's potential is determined at birth. If you are born with a weak technique like Mai Zenin, you are just unlucky. You can't train your way out of bad genetics. This then brings us to another similarity, which is the use of the omniscient narrator. In Hunter x Hunter, the narrator breaks down psychology. In JJK, the narrator acts as a dungeon master reading from a rulebook. Some are not too fond of this. They say, well, show don't tell. But in a system this legalistic where virtual masks and open barrier mechanics matter, the narrator is necessary. You can't have Yuji turn to the camera and explain the physics of imaginary masks. The narrator in JJK is the arbiter of the complex rules and also serves as an inbuilt guidebook. Now, is it perfect? No. The system has faced a lot of criticism, especially in the final arc. Some say that it's too complex. During the calling games, the rules became so dense, points transfer, colony barriers, 19-day deadlines, that reading the manga felt like studying for the bar exam. Akutami shifted from intuitive powers, such as Gojo's push and pull, to abstract concepts like Akari's probability and Kirara's constellations. So if you aren't keeping up with your favorite content creator or subsequent interviews, you might get lost. Though I will say that this also makes the system more fun. It gives us something to think about, or a puzzle to solve, which of course promotes critical engagement instead of mindless consumption of content. So while this might not be for everyone, I wouldn't say that it's a bad thing. Now there's also the criticism of the sukuna cycle, or plot armor. Some argue that binding vows became a get out of jail free card for Sukuna. Every time he was cornered, he supposedly made a vow we didn't see, or sacrificed something trivial, such as when Higuruma's domain confiscated the CT of Sukuna's cursed tool instead of his innate technique. From a mechanic perspective, it is consistent. As I mentioned with the word slash, the cost was actually extremely high, permanent debilitation of the technique. However, the pacing of these reveals, often happening via flashbacks, can feel somewhat unsatisfying to a reader who wants to see the puzzle solved in real time. I will say, as a Gojo fan myself, I was upset when it happened, but at the same time I couldn't help but respect it.
Stand proud. You are strong.
I will say that despite the complexity and the grim determinism, Jujutsu Kaisen's power system stands as a great achievement. It redefined what we expect from shonen battles. It's not just about who hits harder, it's about information warfare. It's about concealing your hand until the last second. It's about the fact that a weak sorcerer with a receipt can nearly kill a prodigy if they play their cards right. It is a system that extracts a heavy toll. Limbs are lost, brains are fried, and lives are traded for a temporary boost in power. It is a hard magic system that refuses to hold your hand to some extent. Jujutsu Kaisen is peak shonen because it treats its audience with respect. It assumes you are smart enough to understand the math, cynical enough to understand the contracts, and tough enough to understand the unfairness of the world. And in a genre often defined by the power of friendship, JJK dared to build a system on the power of malice, and that, I think, is genius.